Okay, thank you, Andy, for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Andy. I am a biomedical engineering major, and I'm super interested and excited about everything to do with space. Starting an aerospace and biomedical engineering technology development company, Stellar Genesis Technologies, and I'm currently getting a degree in biomedical engineering with the end goal of getting either a master's or a doctorate in aerospace engineering.
And can you talk a little bit more about your company? What kind of devices do you plan on, are you most interested in developing?
So a lot of where I'm most interested in developing are technologies that will enable people to live and work in space. So I we've found kind of a niche. We recognized at Stellar Genesis Technologies, we recognized that a lot of the space development is dealing with transportation, and it's not so much dealing with a lot of the technologies that will enable humans to live and work in space. And unfortunately, NASA's budget for those kind of technologies keeps getting dipped into because the SLS is so over budget. And so we're looking at enabling, well, first and foremost, we're trying to develop a platform, the, sorry, the, the Space Generation Network, called SGen for short, which will enable people from all around the world to get together on a platform and find other people to work on space and biotech development projects, um, and be able to design those on the platform with blockchain logged intellectual property protection, and then be able to have a marketplace where they can either sell their designs, maybe to some manufacturers, or they can uh, directly work with manufacturers to get their designs developed. So uh, a lot of what we're working on right now is that software for SGen, and we've got some other side projects going on. Uh, so it's pretty exciting. Um, one example I like to give to just kind of break it down to something substantial for people, is that pretty much all of the technology that we have here on Earth, um, we're gonna want at some point to be able to use in space and on other bodies like the moon or Mars. Um, and in order to get them up there, we have to optimize them for space and weight. So one example would be, we can't just take a regular shovel to the moon or to Mars, and maybe we'll want to have one for a number of reasons. So maybe people could get together and design something like a telescopic aluminum or very lightweight shovel that astronauts could use and take with them.
Can you talk a little bit more about how that might work? The telescoping, uh, um, you're saying a telescoping shovel to like dig in the
Yes.
ground. Okay. For
Yeah.
somehow I heard a shuttle. I was like thinking,
Oh, no, no, no. Yeah,
but
a shovel.
shovel makes a lot more sense. I got that. Yeah, no, I've been thinking the same thing too. I mean, there's so many technologies we'll need in space that would be useful on Earth here today. Why couldn't we develop them now, perfect them, get the benefit from them, and then we're ready to go when the space thing, really uh, starts to take off.
Exactly, and we're trying to get ahead of the curve, and really hoping to see a lot. Really hoping to see the space generation network fleshed out really well, and have everything getting going uh, in about the next 10 to 15 years is when we're really hoping to kind of hit the market of when a lot of that demand will be really high. So we're trying to get as many of the gears turning as we can, um, leading up to some of these really important upcoming missions to the moon and Mars.
Yeah, one area that seems to me that would have a lot of immediate positive impact that like would be inside of the scope of somebody like a student or a hobbyist or what have you would be around like water recycling and purification and management. I was thinking, I wanted to run this idea by you about having a sink that had continuous water flow, right? So the water that went out of the sink got cleaned and what have you, and then flowed back into it for things like, cleaning dishes or what have you. Because so much of that water is, essentially wasted. Those, like why couldn't you sort of purify it, um, right there in the spot and just immediately be able to reuse it? So you have maybe a sink and every year or so you top off to 50 or 100 gallons, and otherwise other than evaporation and absorption and other things you could use it to clean dishes or um, what have you.
And a lot of these ideas are what the Space Generation Network is going to be all about, because I really feel like there's this untapped potential of hobbyists and engineers all around the world who want to contribute. They really want to contribute to the space race, to this new space race 2.0. But they are not really enabled to do that because a lot of it seems like, well, you have to get a job with this kind of company, and then you have to build what they want you to build. And so there's just so much potential for people around the world to collaborate, um, and really exchange a lot of ideas and get things rolling. And so we're really hoping that this platform will accelerate human space travel, and we won't hit this bottleneck where we have a lot of the technology in terms of transportation in place, but we don't have a lot of the things that we need.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like the ability to grow your own food. I mean, if you're going to have a self-sustaining moon base, it should be possible to have a self-sustaining house on a kind of like a regular residential lot. You would have pretty much the same amount of resources available.
Definitely. And um, hopefully, uh, we can get get a lot of solutions together, and have, you know more than just one option for what to eat. Also, you know.
And Space Generation Network, I think you can sign up for that today, right?
Um, you can sign up with Stellar Genesis Technologies to help develop the platform, and you can do that at stellargenesis.com.
Oh, that's awesome. And when did you learn that we were going to the moon in 2024?
Um, I think I learned around the time that it was announced, um, because I follow the news pretty closely.
Would you believe of the 260 plus interviews I've had, only about 50 of them knew that we were actually going to the moon in 2024. In fact, a couple of people have even said, didn't they shut everything down in 2011 with the last shuttle? And one person even said, why is NASA keeping it a secret? So does this surprise you that so few people know we're going?
Um, on one hand, it surprises me because there's there's so much information out there, and especially being part of that aerospace community, I have like a little bit of bias of not, you know, not really fully understanding how little the general public knows. But then again, in my personal interactions with people, I can see that, and it's really frustrating because there's just so much excitement that's not really tapped into because people do get excited about this when they know more about it, but it's really um, just strange to me that more people don't know.
And what do
And
you,
then I
I was
sorry, I
going to
wanted to
say,
say
oh, go ahead.
I wanted to say I think a lot of people are kind of jaded um, about the possibility because we've had 50 years um, to really do more in terms of expanding outward into space, and it hasn't happened. Um, I mean, we've accomplished a lot, and I think the general public isn't aware of how much we've accomplished in low Earth orbit. That's going to enable us to push farther. But the general public is thinking, well, it's been so long, and nothing's happened. So why should I believe that something's going to happen when there have been announcements before, not with like hard deadlines, but there have been announcements before, like with the Constellation program, and and there was some information about during the Obama era about how NASA would be pushing forward to Mars, but um, since the priority has been changed to Moon and then Mars, I think a lot of people are just not informed, and then maybe some of those who are kind of highly skeptical about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think while a lot of people don't know about us going back to the moon in 2024, I think a lot of them are aware of, the SpaceX flight to the International Space Station with the two astronauts, because, that actually happened as opposed to just being a PowerPoint and a dream in the future and that type of thing.
Exactly, yeah, and I was very blessed to get the chance to go see that launch. Um, my wife and I went down to Merritt Island um, this past May and saw the Crew Dragon launch. So um, actually being part of it and um, actually being part of it is really exciting. But I think that a lot of people were able to be a part of it in some way because of the media attention that it garnered. So yeah, definitely these substantial missions are um, a lot more exciting and more real, more substantial to people.
Yeah, I think the flight was supposed to be that Thursday, or was it Wednesday? And then the weather scrubbed it, and there another launch attempt on Saturday. But the weather on Saturday was forecasted to be even worse than it was at the original time. But I guess it opened up and they were able to take off. Because I have a sad story around that. I live in Houston, Texas. My younger son and I, we drove all the way down to Florida to watch the launch of the first time. And we were like, should we stick around? And, he had like some tests the following week, and, they were all virtual, so he could have stayed. But he was like, I really need to be at home to study. And we're like, well, we could stay to Saturday, but the odds of it actually launching on Saturday aren't that good. So we came back and ended up watching it remote, even after all that driving.
Oh man, that's disappointing. Yeah, I think it was a Wednesday that it was supposed to launch initially, and my wife and I were down there, and we were at the base of the Max Brewer Bridge in a decent spot, and then just then all of a sudden people just start walking away, and a couple seconds later I look and see that the launch has been scrubbed, and then we had to make that decision. It's like, okay, the next launch date is a few days away. We didn't initially plan for it to be that far away, or even to be scrubbed, but we were like, well, dang it, we're here, we're staying, and thankfully we were able to accommodate that with our schedules and everything. Um, but I really feel for you because it was really exciting, and that day, that Saturday that it launched, the weather was not very good. So so we're just kind of like, how long are we gonna stay here in Florida to see this? Thankfully, they had two launch attempts on that Saturday, then another attempt on Sunday scheduled, but they ended up being able to do it around the afternoon in Saturday on Saturday, and I was so surprised because the weather was not good, but they just found that little tiny window where things cleared up.
Yeah, it was amazing. So did y'all end up having to stay in like a hotel or Airbnb, or did y'all drive back and then drive back, or how'd you do that?
We're in Memphis, and we drove to Titusville, and I had a room, and we stayed, and then we ended up extending our hotel till that Friday, and then we we did all kinds of little exploration trips around Titusville, trying to scope out like a spot, and we tried to see how close we could get to the rocket before it launched to see it, and we got pretty close. We got within a couple of miles, but then we got turned back by a security checkpoint, and we're like, the checkpoint, and we're like, oh, okay. But what we figured out was that I don't really know if I want to give up my super secret spot, but we found a spot where, like the day of the launch, getting there was impossible. Everything was blocked off. But the day before the launch, you could get there and you could camp out overnight. And so we were able to get a pretty good spot, and we were able to camp there Friday night, and it was fun. And after the launch, there was this really nice lady that had a kayak and let us borrow it, so we got to kayak out on the water a bit. It was a truly magical experience. But this, seeing that rocket launch was just so special to me because it had been 9 years since I saw Atlantis launch from the same launch pad, 39A, and just I remember like some of the melancholy of sadness of seeing Atlantis launch and knowing, wow, we're not gonna be doing this again for a while. And but I didn't think it would take this long, and I know a lot of people in the space community didn't think it would take this long to get back to having, you know,
Oh, oh, you're there. Ah, yes. I
hey,
kind of you froze there for a second, so I was
oh
like,
no.
but you're right. It has taken a long time, and sort of the retirement of shuttle was really sad. I, did you see? Are you watching that Netflix documentary on Challenger, the final flight?
No, I haven't seen that, but I'll take
Yeah,
note.
I think it's a 10-part thing, and they kind of go into the whole the beginning of the shuttle program, uh, the um, the history around selecting a teacher, and then the actual, the history around like the booster and the O-rings and everything else. But as I'm looking at that, I mean, the shuttle was an amazing spacecraft. I mean, just the idea of being able to take it up and bring it back, and the cargo bay and the how roomy it is. I mean, even the SpaceX module, it doesn't have like two levels. I mean, you carry 7 astronauts, but you're still kind of cramped. I mean, the shuttle was kind of neat, and they flew them like 120 some odd times. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's just
135, I think. And if you, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to go to the Kennedy Space Center visitor complex.
It opened up the day after. So Wednesday was the first flight. Thursday it was open, so we went there. We're like we couldn't go to the see the flight, but we'll hop by uh, Kennedy and see
Did,
that.
did you get to see Atlantis, like right there? I
Yeah,
was, I was amazed that there was no glass or anything, and like the tip of the wing was a few feet away, and I was like, I told my wife's name is Joanna. Um, I was like, Joe, I call her Joe. I was like, if we really wanted to, it's a terrible idea, but it is so close that we could literally jump off onto the wing and climb up inside it. I hope nobody ever tries that, but it's just amazing to me to be able to see it in such incredible detail up close, and it really it really makes you just stand there in awe because it's so spacious, and um, it's such a more useful vehicle than I even had been thinking, because there's a lot of controversy regarding the shuttle program, because it was really wasteful in a lot of ways, really expensive, and it was like flying a, a brick into space. Um, but I've been wondering lately, how we could have developed the International Space Station without it. If that project would have taken a lot longer or not. But I'm so excited now to have reusable rockets with really good um, crew and cargo capabilities. Um, but you're right that like the 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 Crew Dragon isn't very spacious, but that's why we have Starship to look forward to, and it can take um, 100 tons. It will be able to take 100 tons and 100 people to orbit. So that's exciting. We have that coming for us.
yeah, I'd love to see a comparison of the volume of a Starship versus the space shuttle. Like if you look at the shuttle bay and the kind of like the crew area, how that would compare to like the payload area in a Starship.
I think the Starship's high, um, but I could be wrong. But I do think it's higher.
I hope so. Yeah, that'd be great. And plus, I mean, we're what, a week away from like a 1.2 kilometer flight?
Yeah, is that SN8?
Yeah. And, we're probably 6 months away from an orbital attempt, I'm hoping. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. or sooner. I feel like Elon's really like he's close to 50 or early 50s. I think he's close to 50, and he's really starting to maybe think, okay, I gotta get this going, not just for humanity and saving the species from extinction and all these reasons, but personally he wants to go to Mars. So he's getting older, and I think he's like, okay, I really gotta push for this. And thankfully he's had so much success that he's really getting a lot of the resources that he needs to be able to push more. And then Blue Origin is just over there kind of secretly like to developing spacecraft and technology, and I'm really hoping that they'll just kind of start to blow us out of the water soon. Just really, I'm hoping that we can be really excited about um, some more competition, because right now SpaceX is just dominating, you know, and I'm so amazed and thankful for the reduction of the cost that we're getting in terms of mass to orbit, but you know, the only thing that's going to really be able to drive those costs down even further is more competition, and that's why commercial the commercialization of space is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about Blue Origin, this last time that you went down to Kennedy Space Center, did you go to the visitor center?
At Blue Origin,
No, no,
or
the visitor center in Florida, for the Kennedy Space Center.
yes, I did, and I saw a Blue Origin like right across the street. I was
I
like,
know those
whoa,
huge. Me too. I was like, whoa, those are huge buildings. It's like,
yeah. I was like, that's an amazing location too. They're right there on Merritt Island, you know, not far from the launch pad. And I'm like, wow, yeah, these are incredible. How did I not know about these incredibly huge like complexes that they have? And yeah, so hopefully they're cooking up um, a lot that they're not telling us about, that they'll just kind of be like, boom, because you've got the richest man in the world behind it, and he's putting $1 billion a year of his personal money.
yeah, I think he may even pick that up a little bit. Increase that to more than 1 billion a year. But I mean, you're right. They've done so much. But like New Shepard, they've done so many test flights. But I'm ready to take my trip. Let's. Why aren't they? Where's the New Shepard service? It's just like they got it to this point and then silence.
Yeah, and I think no, I think that might actually be um, a good thing, because I've noticed when talking to people when talking with the public about SpaceX, so many people just say things like, "Well, their rockets keep exploding and things like that," and I'm just like, no, you don't understand. Those were experimental landings after they already accomplished their objective, and it's really unfortunate that there's kind of this perception that SpaceX rockets blow up a lot when they don't. They really don't. They have an incredible record. Um, so I think maybe Blue Origin is uh, a little smarter about the PR of like doing more of their development in secret, and not getting this public perception of having these explosive rockets, so that they can really like hammer down uh, that security and reliability. So hopefully they'll just like one day be like, hey, uh, we have this launch scheduled and we're sending a bunch of people up, and this is the date that'll happen, and it's like a couple of months or something, and then they'll pull it off.
I just worry, about that incremental testing and validation. I mean, the thing that I like about SpaceX and Starship is if there's a design flaw in it, they're going to find that fairly quickly and be able to change it and make it better. And also developing a whole team with like operational experience of what does it take to actually manage so much liquid methane and put it into the tank, and what are the true kind of like environmental variables you have to worry about, and what are the things that could go wrong, and having like this team that's done like hundreds of tanking and detanking operations, and all these test flights, and this whole team that's had all this experience of like building this. But then you have like Blue Origin, and you have like the SLS, and these are like, big bets. It needs to all go right. Like there's not this. I mean, they're doing like the green run test on SLS, but no flight test. I mean, the first time it's actually going to fly is going to be hopefully next year. Um, yeah, it's just. But and what if that goes wrong? Then you're really messed up for Artemis 2 and 3.
Yeah, there are a lot of differences between um, the different organizations and their approach. And I agree with you that gathering that experience is really important. I wanna mention something because it just happened. Venus.
Oh yes.
There's a potential for life on Venus, and we've got some evidence to suggest that there might be microorganisms in clouds on Venus. Um, because of we detected phosphine, and it's usually in the amounts that we detect it, it's usually produced on Earth by anaerobic organisms. So that is incredibly exciting, and also it's I think it's really going to push forward a lot more missions to Venus to explore and find out more about what is going on over there.
The thing that really concerns me is planetary protection. Um, People are like thinking Venus, there's nothing that can live there. And now we found evidence that there is life there. Let's go explore it. But the kind of like the extension of that logic is there might be life in lots of other places that we don't think there's life. And then it's like, well, we don't want to contaminate stuff. So human exploration, is off the table. I mean, how do you strike that balance where, you kind of preserve the science, but you don't completely close off the expansion of humanity throughout the rest of the solar system?
Yeah, it's really um, it's really troubling to think that we might introduce some species that could kill native species, or we could introduce some species and then later detect them and not. It would be. I think we are smart enough that we could figure out their origin, but it still would be a lot of controversy in the scientific community about was this there before or not. And thankfully, a lot of the planetary protection protocols have been super upgraded pretty recently. Um, I don't know if you know about that, but
I don't.
yeah.
What's happened?
Well, I really don't know very many specifics, but I do know that um, with upcoming missions, NASA and SpaceX and others are having to adhere to stricter guidelines about how to um, sterilize their craft and everything before they go. But you know, to me, it's just so mind-boggling that they're able to do that. I think uh, a lot of what NASA is planning on launching is going to be the most sterile and the most um, free of potential microorganisms as possible. But I think fairly recently, in the past couple of years, there was this concern that um, we as a species might have accidentally sent a bunch of tardigrades to the moon. I don't know
Oh,
if you
not
heard.
accident. It was on purpose.
Oh, it was on purpose.
Yes.
Was that the Chinese Space Agency?
I was the Israeli one.
Oh, oh yeah. Oh, okay. Can you tell me more about that?
I just, somebody wanted to see if they would survive there, because they live in very inhospitable places here. So,
And yeah, they're extremophiles. And so, what was the outcome?
well, I mean, the Israeli probe crashed, cratered. So who knows?
Yeah. Wouldn't
Eh,
it be something to see to find them and they're doing well. They can they can live in space. So hopefully, I don't know. It's yeah. There's that tension between wanting to expand, but also wanting to preserve the potential for scientific discovery, especially of life on other planets and other planetary bodies. Um, yeah, it's it's troubling, um, especially when you've got these different extremophiles that you're like, well, maybe we could have introduced them at some point, but hopefully we will find some substantial evidence that there is life that um, evolved separately from life on Earth.
yeah, I mean, the panspermia theory that the life on Earth may have started out from someplace else.
Right. I remember watching this sci-fi movie like a decade ago, and the ultimate conclusion. This isn't much of a spoiler because I don't remember the name of the movie, but the ultimate conclusion was that there were these like highly advanced Martians that had seeded Earth, and I think about that pretty often because Mars, I think, ended up being more hospitable to life before Earth did, um, or at similar times. I'll have to look more into that, but it's it's not too crazy to think that maybe an asteroid or something. Um, well, maybe it was intentional, or maybe an asteroid or something brought life to Earth, because we do have these different extremophiles that can exist.
Yeah, indeed. Um, well, if it was safe and affordable, would you have an interest in going into space yourself?
Yes, I would, and I would uh, I would jump on it on that opportunity. It's really it's really like a big decision, because especially the concern of is this a one-way trip or not? If you take a one-way trip off Earth, you have to be fully aware and accepting of the fact that you just left the place that has evolved for that you have evolved as a species to live perfectly happy and comfortably, and you're going to a harsh, extreme environment. And like, there's the fun of zero gravity or lower gravity, um, but there are also a lot of challenges, and you're gonna miss the sounds of rain and wind and all these other things. But for me personally, I have more incentive to want to get out of what I consider to be the oppressive gravity of Earth, because I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and uh, it causes a lot of pain in the joints, um, and so I can see all this potential for people with joint disorders and people with arthritis and all these things. These people living more comfortably and in less pain, um, in microgravity or on 1/6 gravity on the moon, or 1/3 gravity on Mars. Anything lower than this oppressive 1G would be amazing for me, because I would be in so much less daily chronic pain.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. I mean, it'd be neat to actually send you into orbit, uh, for a week or two and see what effect it has.
Exactly. Yeah, I would jump on that opportunity so fast because I really want to know. And one of my long-term goals, super long-term, is to be able to develop a program where people who have these kind of joint disorders and different problems like maybe partial paralysis um, would be able to have a higher quality of life outside of the Earth's gravity. I would really like to see a program developed where we can get these people to a less painful place to live, maybe on a colony on the moon or something.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a time when we didn't understand electromagnetism, and at some point we detected it, and we learned to send out electromagnetic waves, and there's less time that we've kind of started understanding gravity, and now we're understanding gravitational waves produced by huge, gigantic structures. But what if, you know, there's some properties of gravity that would allow for you to be able to reduce um, gravity wherever you are, or increase it, or what have you? I mean, and I just wonder, you talked about the oppressive 1G that we have here on Earth. I think there's another aspect of that too, is that we all like the basic form of learning is to ignore things, right? Is to filter out the thing that's the same and to focus on the things that are different. And since we all experience a 24-hour day, one atmosphere of pressure thereabout, one G of gravity, what have we just created like psychological blinders to, that the moment we start having observers and thinkers and what have you that are in completely different environments, their mind just goes a completely different way and they see things that were always there, but we're just like completely blinded to.
Yes, yes. It's so exciting to think about, and I like to try to remind myself every day if I can that um, there are so many artificial constraints that my brain puts on my life that I have to try to be aware of because um, certain deadlines and certain things are more hard set, and then you've got other objectives and ways of seeing things that are maybe just kind of second nature, which if you question them, you can see things in this whole new perspective. So yeah, really being outside of this constraint of thinking of gravity as this, you know, of 1G as this fundamental inescapable thing, and really seeing these different perspectives where you're really experiencing, how mass affects gravity and things like that might, inspire somebody to have some kind of insight that will lead us to some anti-gravity technology. I mean, that's the dream. That's the dream. Being able, you know, if we can really combat gravity more effectively, then the whole solar system is ours, and beyond that, we really can can become a multiplanetary species a lot faster, and we'll have so many just improvements in our technology. And what's interesting that I just thought about is maybe that capability. I think in Star Trek they talk about like that technology societies that have warp drive and those who don't. But yeah, maybe the ability to alter gravity, at least, for in a localized environment, um, is one of those filters that alien civilizations are like, okay, well, when those humans figure that out, we'll tell them about the whole Galactic Federation thing.
I know. It's uh it's going to be an interesting thing. Was wondering if you saw that announcement yesterday about Space Hero.
No, what's that?
So apparently there's this group that is having a unscripted reality TV show, that the winner of which will get a 10-day trip to the International Space Station. Now, we've seen lots of programs that have been sort of in this vein and you don't know much about them. And I don't think they have the funding for it yet. But I mean, I don't think so. Maybe they do. Who knows? I'm sure if they did, they would tell us. So the fact they hadn't told us probably means they don't. Okay, but uh, there's Dr. Moraba Jah from the University of Texas in Austin. He's like one of their spokespeople, and he came to our North Houston Space Society meeting last month to speak. So I feel like he's legit. And then like the provider for the service is Axiom Aerospace, which last year got a contract with SpaceX for you know a, a Crew Dragon. Actually, I think that was this year. They got a contract with SpaceX for a Crew Dragon flight to take some private astronauts, and they're developing private astronaut training things. So they're legit. So I feel like that it's probably could happen, and I think you know a lot of the thing is going to be how much interest are they able to demonstrate to then go out there and say, people really would participate in this or be interested in seeing who wins. I'm just kind of wondering what all the challenges are, in terms of the I've never watched many of reality TV shows, but the ones I've seen I always thought were kind of goofy, so I'm kind of scared. But I hope to find out in person. So I signed up for their email list and their insiders program yesterday. So you might, it's free, and the uh, it might be something worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I'm definitely, now that you've informed me about it, I'm gonna sign up for what, however involved in that I can get, with everything else I have going on. And I really think there's going to be a lot of interest, if they can get the marketing and the publicity that they need, because people watch the game shows all the time. There are just a plethora of game shows out there that make enough money to give away all these prizes regularly, or they contract with these companies to give them marketing by giving away something. And so when you've got entities like Axiom that are, I think, mainly focused on space tourism or something, then
I
with
think
venture capital behind them, they should be able to have a flight like that, so they can garner interest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, kind of like the whole astronaut candidate training thing is like, I mean, you could see it as being like American Ninja, a mudder's race, maybe some type of like a quiz show type of thing. You got all this interpersonal drama. Do you send the person that everybody likes and is really good, or do you send the absolute best person and he's a jerk? It's like, do they vote each other off? And what are they thinking about? Are they like thinking, oh, I don't think he's a good fit? Or are they thinking, oh no, he's too good of a fit. We need to get rid of the competition. It's just like, how you structure it could be really mesmerizing.
What would be really interesting to read about, um, for you, and I need to read more about it, is JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency. Their astronaut selection process is very interesting, because they kind of, at some point in the process, they put these some candidates together, and they have to live together, and there are these different psychologists. There's like this whole panel of psychologists that just monitor them like 24/7, and you can't send the jerk. You just can't do it, because when you're in that close of an environment with people, interpersonal skills are very important. And but there will, so there's always going to be this balance of like the mental and the physical capabilities of whoever you're sending up. I find a lot of inspiration in the fact that a lot of astronauts are kind of like up there in terms of years. I'm only 24, so I've got a while before I hit like my late 40s, which is a common age for a lot of astronauts. So I'm hoping that I'll find a way up there. But one thing that concerns me is there's so much focus on physical fitness, because you don't want your astronauts to die. But I'm really hoping that there is a way where we can balance, the maybe this person has a joint disorder or something, but they're able to withstand the 3 Gs or so, that we're gonna put on them, maybe more. And once they get to space, they're gonna have an improved quality of life. So I'm really hoping that at some point in the coming decade or two, or maybe 3, that will have more opportunity for people who aren't in perfect physical health to get into space. People who will benefit from being in space.
Yeah, I mean, like paraplegics, for example.
Exactly, that's a great example.
I mean, how useful are your legs really in a zero G environment? Um, I mean, the biggest concern would be some type of emergency situation, like on the pad or, in the water or what have you. I could see that being a problem. But once it becomes sort of routine and safe, why not?
And that's some of the beauty of Starship's suborbital plans, is being able to send people around the world, in like half an hour or so on these suborbital flights will really make space travel so routine that it's just like getting on an airplane. And if you think about it, there are a lot of parallels there, because, in the early days of flying an airplane, you had to be pretty like physically fit, and there was a lot to it, but over time it's become more commercial. And now you've got handicapped people taking flights regularly.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's anybody could fly. Doesn't matter what size or shape or uh, you know physical health you're in. We just all hop on and hop off, and we have the same issues with it lands in the middle of the ocean. I
Hmm.
mean, you're going to have the same trouble you would have with a spacecraft, but we accept that. We're like, you know, uh, but we don't make sure everybody knows how to swim before they take a flight to Europe. So,
Right.
yeah.
And I haven't seen the. That's a funny way to put it. That's awesome. I haven't seen the numbers, but spaceflight is pretty safe. And the farther we get away from automobiles, the safer we all are, because automobiles are just so inherently dangerous. And then you've got airline flights, which are so much safer. And then I'm hoping that and a lot of the reason is the attention that goes to who the attention that goes to the regulation. Basically, it gets more intense. Automobile regulations are pretty lax compared to airline regulations, which are pretty lax compared to like rocket regulations. So I think the more attention that's being put on any individual trip, the more the safer it is, and the more you're going to be able to have people of varying levels of physical fitness. But one thing that is going to be inescapable for a while is that you have to be able to withstand about, I think, 3 Gs or so. I think the shuttle pulled about 3 Gs. I could be wrong, but I think in general you're hitting about that, and on a lot of trips. I know it can get higher than that, but I think that we'll be able to reduce that as time goes on. And I really love to brainstorm different ways of getting into space without putting as much strain on the human body. So different approaches than taking a rocket and throwing a ton of mass behind you and going really fast and hitting escape velocity. Different approaches are inherently fascinating to me, like Virgin Galactic, I think. Are they behind Spaceship Two?
Yes.
And taking a plane and then having a rocket go off of it. And I think they're about to have their first flight from their complex that they built.
Yeah, I think October 22nd, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, okay. Is it called Spaceflight America or something like that?
Spaceport America.
Spaceport America. Yeah, that's a really cool idea too, because I'm so excited for there to be spaceports, just everywhere. I came across, that just reminds me, I came across a company that's wanting to develop the first really big, like, hub, like, spaceport in low Earth orbit. I can't remember the name right now. I'll have to get back to you on it. But it's a really cool idea of, like, okay, we're gonna need a space station that's specifically, enabled to have all these different spacecraft come and dock there and kind of stay there and refuel and things and people live there, at least temporarily, and you'd have crew living there full time. It's a really cool idea.
Yeah, that would be neat, for sure. So what do you think it'd take to get the average person aware and excited about our future in space? Like, I mean, how's that happen?
It's really confusing to me what the general public likes to focus on. Especially in American media, it's just confusing to me the amount of attention that's given to just unproductive things, reality TV that's not related. But I think the more you can kind of blur the lines there, where, maybe, like you said, the Space Hero, where they have a reality show, and where you can kind of blur the lines between the kind of media that is out there and mass media that's really common, and the different ways you can bring space exploration into that could really help. And one thing that I firmly believe is that the more that people have an ability to contribute, to be involved, directly in some proportion, the more excitement there's going to be about space exploration. And that's a big, like, driving factor between the Space Generation Network. Really, if you could, like, pull up an app or something and like share your ideas of how we could improve something, and then, if you're knowledgeable enough or you're driven enough, you could develop that idea further, or you could just put it out there with some feelers, and maybe other people could take up your idea and build off of it, and there would still be, like, some link to you with the blockchain where you've got this immutable record of, you've got this log that can't be changed of how a project or a process has developed. I really think that all of this could come together to increase public interest in space exploration and accelerate its development.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's all about people's personal connection, which brings me up with another thought. Next year, Astrobotic is landing a probe on the moon as part of the Commercial Lunar Payload Services program. Them and two of the machines are both landing probes on the moon. But Astrobotic is, as part of the Commercial Lunar Payload Services program, they're delivering scientific packages for NASA. And the provider is 100% responsible for developing the spacecraft, finding the launch provider, and all that good stuff. But they can also co-manifest anything they want. Like these aren't dedicated NASA missions. And so like Astrobotic is doing this thing with DHL, the package delivery thing. And
Oh,
for about this, for delivering something the size of a dime, you can have it sent on the Astrobotic mission for like $450 about.
oh wow, that's exciting. And that actually reminds me a little bit of something Blue Origin is doing, where you can send that
The
postcard.
postcards, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the more that we can do things like that where we involve the public, the better. And um, you know, that's actually, speaking of Blue Origin, that's a great there's a great resource that can be tapped into for space exploration, because you could, I mean, when there's something to put out there, you know, you could have Alexa, Bezos could decide to have Alexa be like, would you like to learn more about how you can be part of space exploration? And or just put this banner on Amazon shopping, that's those are some exciting things that can develop when you've got like one of the you've got the richest man in the world and one of the most powerful men in the world, with products that and services that almost, that a really big fraction of the people in the world are using. um, you, it's exciting, and that's so cool that DHL is doing that, and I can't wait until I can send a postcard to my friend on the moon, or more preferably vice versa, I send a postcard from the moon to a friend
Yes.
on Earth.
Yeah, a little selfie with the Earth in the background and say, "Hey, you're in here someplace." you know?
Point to the not so pale blue dot, moon-sized star. I guess it's a little bit bigger. However, Earth appears from the moon, pointing to it and saying, "You are here."
Exactly. Um, well, uh, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
um, there's so much to explore. There's so much to talk about when it comes to space exploration. Uh, but one thing that our conversation has made me want to do is just, get out there on the internet and do some more research about all these different topics and these different ideas. Um, One interesting thing, which maybe you know more about, is uh, helium-3 and the potential for cold fusion and developing, mining some helium-3 from the moon and things like that.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, but I actually don't know much about it other than, we don't quite have the reactors yet, and we don't know for sure there's how much helium-3 is there. Uh, yeah, I couldn't say.
Yeah. Oh, but that does remind me about something else that I've been thinking about recently, which is the commercialization of space. Oh, and okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the commercialization of space, and we'll talk about a little bit about Space Force, because an interesting thing to talk about. But with the commercialization of space, it's really interesting to me that it's going to be tough to regulate a lot of things. And one concern that I have is this kind of environmentalism for the moon. So we're going to be mining and extracting a lot of material from the moon, hopefully for some flights to farther out in our solar system to like the asteroid belt or Mars or Venus. But at some point we might need to stop mining from the moon because we're taking away from its mass, and we need the moon for life on Earth. At what point have you taken away enough mass to affect the gravitational effects that the moon has on the Earth, to stabilize its orbit, or its rotation, and to produce the tides and everything that a lot of life on Earth depends on? At what point are you starting to affect that? I'm really curious to know. I think it would hopefully not be an issue, because by the time we got to that point, we would already be done mining on the moon, and we would have found more profitable mining on asteroids, which we can mine some asteroids without affecting much, hopefully.
I know. Yeah. That's a good point. I have talked to some people as part of this series. My plan was to talk to everyday random people about their views on space. And with the whole COVID-19 thing, I've done everything virtually and just begging for people to talk to me online. Um, but I did talk to one person randomly. Um, and, she was saying, she wasn't happy about us going to space because, we messed up the Earth. Why would we mess up the moon too? And so kind of looking at environmentalism from that standpoint. I don't know about how much mass, once you remove it, at what point do you start destabilizing the Earth or really affecting the tides? Maybe the tides become less strong, and, there's like life that's right there on the edge. And like these tidal pools, they're no longer um, working as it used to. But I thought about another thing. We have Greenpeace here on Earth, right? Where there's an environmental activist group that's called Greenpeace because they're protecting life in places, the rainforest and, sea life and that type of thing. I was thinking, imagine at some point the moon gets completely enclosed in like some type of habitat and it's like green. And then at that point you have gray peace. Like gray peace would be like going, you know, we want the moon in its pristine gray form. Don't put life there. I can just see that happening.
That's really, or preserving the life that ends up being on the moon.
Oh, yeah, that's true too.
And you'll have that everywhere. Maybe you have some life growing on a space station or something. You're like, we need to preserve this, and we don't need to interfere with these ecologies that have developed, because maybe we depend on them, or maybe these creatures, we grant them some autonomy or something like that. But that's really interesting to think about environmental activism outside of the Earth, and hopefully we'll have more of that, and hopefully we'll take a really. One thing I love about space exploration is that it demands sustainability. It demands you to think through how you can have a sustainable, like, little ecosystem as you move outside the Earth so that you can survive. And I really think that a lot of the thinking that goes into solving problems necessary for us to solve in order to explore space, I think that a lot of that thinking is going to enable environmental advancements on Earth. in terms of sustainability and whatnot. We're gonna realize, oh, we can do this, and maybe we'll be able to scrub a bunch of carbon from our atmosphere and release it on Mars or something.
Or even better, build things out of them. I mean, carbon is strong. I mean, if you like look at a plant, 99% of the plant material is made out of carbon from the atmosphere. And, why not
Wow.
build buildings out of carbon where you have like little things that are getting the carbon, like these huge skyscrapers, just taking carbon out of the
Hmm.
atmosphere to build like the graphene diamond structures.
Or spaceships, because you know SpaceX wasn't able to like developing carbon fiber uh, spaceships and everything wasn't really working for Starship because it got kind of over budget and behind and was taking too long. But at some point, someone's going to figure that out, and maybe it will be SpaceX because they've put some investment to it, so maybe they'll keep working on it in the background. But somebody's going to figure it out, and so maybe we can, I don't know, extract some carbon from the atmosphere and use it for things like that. And I also want to talk about Space Force because that's such a controversial topic
Yeah.
for everybody and for good reasons. But when it was first announced, I didn't exactly think that it was going to happen, but then when it started happening and when I already knew about Space Command under the Air Force. They've got around 36,000 people working for Space Command, and I think NASA only has about 18,000 people working for them. So Space Command is huge, and now that it's under this umbrella of the Space Force, it could be a really powerful organization. And it actually is pretty important to protect our national interest in space, but more importantly to protect our our how you have your airspace. We
Our
have to
space
protect our
space.
space. Yeah, because it's so easy to send something from space down to, it could be a warhead, it could be a rod of tungsten, it could be any number, it could just be some rocks. It could be any number of things that you could send from space and get them down to the Earth pretty quickly, and damage a country. So having some protection there, and also some protection of our satellites, things like that, is pretty important. And I'm really hopeful, and I'm really convicted. I think that it's not going to influence the development of space exploration to this extent that you're going to have like all of space exploration militarized, or this just, hopefully we're not going to end up with a really like overbearingly strong military presence in space.
Yeah, the thing that I'm looking for on the near term horizon isn't like some type of connected kinetic weapon to like hurt the Earth, but satellite kidnapping. I think that's going to be the next thing. Having these satellites that go up right next to another satellite and essentially maybe encase it in something, and then being held hostage until a ransom's paid, or some type of uh, you know, demand is met. I mean, you could even see
Mm-hmm.
at some point, non-governmental actors going out there and kidnapping space. And you don't even need to physically
Space
get,
pirates.
yeah, space pirates, yeah. And, you actually don't even need to be physically there, right? Because um, all you need to do is be able to hijack the signal somehow, and kind of reprogram it and take control of it.
Yeah, and maybe you would be able to throttle it, into a rapid decay orbit or something, or threaten to do that. And it's really sorry, I just thought about one of my favorite things to talk about. And I'm trying to like segue, but also, do it a little smoothly. But it's really important that we're able to preserve our satellites and our interests, because we depend so heavily on them. We depend so heavily on GPS. We depend the military depends so heavily on a lot of their satellites. Um, and another thing uh, there is that when Space Force was announced, I got really excited because I was like, yay, more funding. Because in the United States, our military funding is like ridiculous. I don't really agree with it, the amount of money that we put into the military proportional to how much we put into, um, you know, public welfare. But since some of it is being directed towards space exploration now, I'm excited about that. But I do want to talk about the Carrington event of, I hope I got this date right, I think about 1859. But coronal mass ejections, do you know anything about coronal mass ejections?
There's a person on the internet. She goes by Space Weather Woman, and she has like a weekly space forecast where she goes over the sun and kind of like the chances, solar wind and sunspots and all that. And she talks about how like the low, mid, and um, geosynchronous orbits, and kind of thing. Because I mean, our environment, our I mean, first of all, the radiations like changes, based upon what the sun's emitting and lots of other things. And
Mhm.
the Earth's atmosphere actually is not static in terms of its size. Some low Earth satellites, whenever they get heated up or excited, the atmosphere gets excited. Actually, the Earth's atmosphere gets a little thicker in the upper regions, and then it can really slow down those satellites and put them into a decay orbit. Like you were just talking about. And so, um, I think you really might enjoy her program. She's actually trains meteorologists to give space reports, to do space weather reporting.
Wow, that's exciting. It's exciting that I love seeing the development of other fields that are space related, like xenobiology and things like that. Just really excites me to see uh, a space weather woman. That's amazing, and I'm gonna have to look into that. I wonder how much she talks about the potential for a coronal mass ejection and the impact that would have on modern society.
I know. Could
Because
you imagine?
um,
I mean, I just, I mean, can you imagine you can't get on the internet one day, you can't call anybody, you don't know anybody's number, the Amazon delivery is not coming, Instacart, the refrigerator stopped working. I mean, just like you're talking
yeah,
about that
and
event.
especially
You're talking about that event in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, where like the telegraph wires caught on fire, and it was just like
mhm.
anything with like a circuit was like dangerous.
Yeah, and we're and fried and we were lucky that we hadn't. I think it was about 1859. Um, we were lucky that we hadn't developed much in terms of like electrical circuits and whatnot at that point when it hit. But um, these events, these coronal mass ejections, tend to uh, it seems like they have kind of this pattern of coming about every 150 years or so. So we're overdue for one. And can you even imagine it happening now while we're in a pandemic where we can't do a lot of what we normally do? So everything depends on this technology. can you just imagine the chaos if that technology suddenly was wiped out?
And who would believe it? I mean, that's the other side. It's like, it's obviously China. I mean, they're just after us. We've got
Well,
time to nuke them now. While we
maybe
still
maybe
can.
maybe the public perception, maybe like when there's not much information out because everything's been wiped out, yeah, or not everything has been wiped out because we do have some like radiation shielding and whatnot, and that can protect some devices. I know that some Facebook and Google servers I think will be okay because they're housed in these big buildings with like electromagnetic radiation shielding, but um, but thankfully we will like hopefully have enough running to have. We're going to see it coming, so that helps. There's going to be some warning available. Whether anybody will listen or not, I don't know. But scientists are able to see the high activity solar activity, and this space weather woman will tell people about it, and NASA will probably put out some warnings like, hey, we need to put all our phones in the microwave or something like with it turned off, but we need to have some radiation shielding, but you know we're going to have a lot of satellites fried, and we're going to have a lot of communication loss, and in some of that chaos is definitely conceivable that any number of nations might think, oh, this is a hostile act by another nation. So that's scary. I hadn't even thought about that. It could very easily be pandemic, coronal mass ejection, World War III.
Exactly. And murder hornets. Don't forget that.
And fire tornadoes.
Fire tornadoes. I know.
And social unrest. But I really wanted to write a science fiction novel when I get some time, and I finished the science fiction novel that I'm currently writing, which is about like an AI gone rogue, in the form of like a Roomba style vacuum cleaner. Whenever I finish that, I want to write about what if the Carrington event happened, in modern times. What would the fallout look like? We're going to have immediately a lot of death, unfortunately, because there are going to be airplanes in the air that are going to lose navigation.
Well, don't forget
And
about the people in the elevators.
yeah, a lot of people stuck in elevators. You know what? That's more incentive for me to take the stairs everywhere I go. Yeah, there's just so much there. There's so much that's going to happen, and I, for one, am very dependent on Google Maps. So I could
I
be on a
know people be like lost. They're like, "Where's the place to the community pool? I know it's around here someplace."
yeah. There's a lot that could go wrong. So I'm just gonna have to hope and pray that stays relegated to science fiction. But on the other side of that, we do need to have some kind of preparation. Um, as as a nation, as a world, we need to have some preparation.
Yeah, and there's so many cheap steps you could do. I mean, have
Hmm.
printed knowledge. You may not read it, but at least you have it available to you in the worst case. I mean, even something as simple as a Boy Scout handbook that has like
Yeah,
covers so much.
yeah. I've got this really cool app that is an offline app that is like a survival guide, survival manual. But I was thinking the other day, I was like, what if my phone gets wiped out?
Exactly.
I need
Yeah.
to I need like something printed, or I need to um, put that on like an old Android phone and stick it in a. I think maybe my fireproof safe would shield electro electromagnetic radiation, hopefully. Um, but yeah, and Starlink would be disrupted
Yes.
pretty heavily, and maybe by the time it happens, everybody will be using Starlink for internet because of the low ping. I mean, the because of the transfer speeds and everything.
But I was just thinking, you turn these smart satellites into just bricks that are just that you can't maneuver them, communicate with them. You can't. You're not even sure where they are. I mean, because you're probably so dependent upon active signaling from the Starlink satellites to actually be able to figure out where they are. Um,
Hmm.
so then what do you do whenever you try to launch things? You're like, something's might be there, might not. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really impressive the kind of orbital debris tracking that Space Command, now Space Force, is doing. And there's a really cool website. I don't know if you've seen it, where you can go and you can actually see all the orbital debris that's being tracked. Um,
And
I'm
that's
trying to think.
actually, more about Jaw, the person I was telling you about that, associated that space hero. What he does at the University of Texas, he's put together a kind of open source or shared source satellite repository where he's taking information from like NORAD and from the Russian thing and from like Planet Labs and he's saying, he showed examples where each one of those things says this satellite is in three different places, right? And even based upon his own analysis of the data they provided, he thinks is actually in a different place, and there's like so much uncertainty around these these things in orbit.
Yeah, and that's wow. That's scary a little bit, and but you do only need to know where it is within a certain like window. But yeah, in that tracking, there's a lot going on. You've got to take relativity into account, and uh, there's a lot going on.
And
Um,
the atmosphere changes, the solar wind changes. I mean,
yeah,
all that.
and it's so important to track orbital debris, and it's really um, about 2015. I started a website, cleanupspace.net, and the and I was just kind of it was just kind of blog, and I was hoping at some point to get more people interested in like maybe even a nonprofit or something where we're trying to clean up orbital debris. But or the website could also just exist to spread information about hey, this is a problem, what kind of solutions can we find, and here's some existing proposals, here's some existing things. So you've got links on the website to different things like that. And so it's really interesting, like the different proposals that have been put out there for you know um, for cleaning up orbital debris. Um, and the fact that the I was going to say earlier, you talked about like satellite hijacking and things like that. I think most like organizations that are capable of getting into low Earth orbit, most nations and everything, are going to know you can't blow up somebody's satellite and not have it come back to haunt you, because the second you like blow up or impact another person's satellite, you've suddenly created so much more orbital debris that you have to track if you have any interest in low Earth orbit. So, yeah.
Yeah, but what if you don't? What if you're pure? There's people that just
Chaotic evil.
yeah, I mean they just want to stay here, focus on Earth, go back to the way it was 2,000 years ago. That's our goal.
Yeah, that's that there's always going to be, I think, in society, you're always going to have this tension between tradition and progressive um, thought, ways of thinking. Um, and, in a lot of ways, that tension, that dynamic is important, because it can kind of rein in, um, you know, some like technological development or something that could be harmful in some way. It can kind of, slow things down and help us look around and think, okay, what is the potential impact of this? But in a lot of ways, it's just impeding progress and unnecessary and really frustrating. Um, and you see this in science fiction a lot. This is a recurring theme of this dynamic of like some kind of religious fundamentalism or traditionalism or something, and then on the other end you've got a lot of scientific advancement and progress, and you're going to have these competing interests. So it's really interesting to me to think about how that dynamic itself is important.
It is. And there's also the other side of it. A lot of people, I think, feel like, what is my purpose here on earth? And what gives me meaning, and how do I mean, on one hand, that religious traditional structure was kind of, stifling. But on the other hand, within it, there were clear values and clear purpose and clear place. Whether or not you agree with it or not, I think we could both agree that in these more traditional religious, like social structure, you it's there are judgments in that structure about what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, and
Mm-hmm.
what's of value and what's not, and the grand purpose of life and all that. Whether or not you agree with the specifics, I think we could all agree that those structures provide that structure.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. You've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and if you get too far out there on the cutting edge of advancement and exploration, you can lose sight of a lot of those. You can lose your grounding, you know, literally, and you can lose your connection with spirituality and meaning and purpose and a lot of these things of what it means to be a human. So it can be important to have some of those ideals and structure in place, psychologically.
And that's a kind of interesting point. I think there's more agreement lower down on Maslow's hierarchy of needs and
Mm-hmm.
less agreement as you go up. And like on the lowest thing, it's about physical needs, water, food, shelter,
But even
protection. Hmm?
when it comes to like public welfare, even that ends up being controversial. It's like, how much should we contribute to somebody else's, you know, base pyramid? I'm over here trying to achieve self-actualization, and and I don't want to contribute to somebody else's like basic needs or whatever. There's a lot of thinking like that. And to me, I see it from kind of a progressive political viewpoint where it's like, well, you can achieve your self-actualization and still have a ton of money and resources that you can use to help other people get even the basis levels of Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of like countries and societies, I wonder if those countries that are mainly filled with people that are still trying to make those basic needs
Mm-hmm.
are more cohesive and uniform and kind of, more people are on the same page than countries and societies where people are higher up and there's a lot of disagreement on priorities. I mean, because if you're about to starve to death, I think we could all agree that food should probably be at the top of your priority list. But if you're like, I got the food, I got the water, I got the shelter, we're at peace, now what?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's argue over what we're going to watch on Netflix, you know.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's really interesting the spirituality that has arisen in a lot of like third world countries and communities, um, where you've got tribes that are just you seem really happy, and maybe like really cohesive in their understanding of the world and their purpose and everything. But they're still on kind of some of those lower levels in some ways, uh, in terms of finding like basic food and shelter and water um, and things like that. So it's really interesting. Like the higher up you go, the more differences arise, and yeah.
Well, and if you look at like the Amish and Mennonite communities, I mean, these are people who have purposely said, we're going to stay at this level of kind of our needs. And it's kind of interesting a way of thinking and looking at it, actually being intentional about what level of technology you're going to allow, and what you choose not to. And it's really it's a thorny issue.
I think what is important, when it comes to the ethics of all of it, is that you respect other people's autonomy and you don't try to force your ideals on others. But that gets thorny too. it, it, it all gets thorny at some point.
Well, so maybe we'll find faster and light travel. Maybe we'll figure out how to hibernate people. All these things in terms of getting to another star system. But all those technologies, are questionable. We don't have a good path to that right now. But one thing that I think is within side of our realm of engineering, maybe just at the edge, is this concept of a generation ship. The concept that you would be able to have a ship that you've recycled enough, and you had, the people that take off, it's their great, 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 great grandchildren that arrive at the other place. Now, consider the ethics of this situation.
Yes, right. Mm-hmm.
The people that took off, they all wanted to go. They signed up for this, but their children did not. Now, what do you do about that?
It's that's a really interesting issue, and I've come across it before. I was just thinking, maybe maybe you have um, an an environment, maybe you make an environment that's just really nice and hospitable. You make a community where it's if you live on Earth and you decide that you want to start or you and your spouse, you want to move to Antarctica or something and do research there, and then you end up having a family, or you're going to have a family, like maybe one of you's pregnant and you all move to Antarctica or something. You're subjecting your children to that environment. But what we do have in that situation is some level of reversibility where there's more opportunity for that person to leave and explore Earth. So there's really a huge tension there of like how much is the experience of living on Earth vital to a human life, you know, and what rights do we have to take that away? But there's also the possibilities of what they might find in a different solar system, and there are also the possibilities um, of the kind of cohesiveness of purpose that an intergenerational starship could have. So
Well, and you know, every generation is born ignorant, and they don't know anything about the past. So, is part of the agreement of these people that leave for the other star system? to purposely leave their children ignorant about Earth and completely focus them only on where they're going. So they don't even think, they don't even know of the option.
Maybe at some point you start to have a review of the success of different methods of developing an intergenerational starship, and then the question comes up, yeah, do we tell them what they're missing out on, or not?
And you
That's
always
a
have
great
that
that's
guy
a
that
great
just doesn't quite go along with it. And they have to make him out to be this old kook that doesn't know what he's talking about.
I wonder if you have an escape pod for people like that to just take and go explore, and maybe a nearby asteroid or whatever the hell they want to do. Like, how do you maintain social order in a ship like that when what kind of culture do you have to develop to have people like working and making this continuously working, and what do you do about the renegades, and what do you do about their rights to autonomy?
Yeah, I mean, this idea of having a culture, you know, there's always conflict with that and autonomy. I mean, culture itself is overlaying external values onto our actions. And on the other side of it, our actions and views and discussion are shaping this culture.
Yeah.
It's like we're like the atoms, and then culture is like the temperature.
Yeah. I don't know if you read The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Have
Yeah,
you?
and Robert Heinlein also wrote a book called Children of the Sky, which is about the generational ship where there's like a revolt.
Uh, I haven't
And
read the timeline, but I
it's
hadn't
a
read that.
it's a small book. It's like less than 200 pages, I think. But there's like it starts out in the middle of the trip, and the knowledge that they're on the generation ship was lost, and so they think that inside the ship is the entire universe. And like the idea of the ship moving is considered to be heresy. And
Whoa.
like what you would consider as being like some type of village leader or whatever, they're calling the scientist because that title was passed down.
Wow.
It's a really thought-provoking book, so I think you like that. But The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, I love that book. I've probably read it like 3 times.
Yeah,
What
I've read it twice, and what I love about it, I want to talk about. I think it was The Moon is the Harsh Mistress. Yeah, where they start out as a prison colony on on the moon, which is really a cool analogy to like what happened with Australia. But you've got a prison colony on the moon, um, and then eventually this community grows, and you've got all these people that are there that were born there, and now another really interesting space topic is space politics. What kind of um, political like relationship should there be between nations on the Earth and societies on the Moon and societies on Mars?
Well, and as you start having settlements throughout the solar system, and you have people born on Mars and on the moon and on the moons of Jupiter, moons of Saturn, on these O'Neill cylinders, in the clouds on Venus, wherever.
Mm,
Uh, you know, they start seeing the world completely different from each other. And sort of you have this fragmentation, even to an extent that's unimaginable. The like Earth's societies are one big happy family compared to this fragmentation that I'm talking about. That's how fragmented they are. I mean, we don't even look the same. Like I'm not talking about skin color and facial features. I'm talking about some of us have forearms and you know,
yeah.
we have tails and whatever.
Over just a couple of million years, you're going to have like all this evolution take place. But
Well,
before
with the
that,
radiation and with the kind of like very different environments, it may be a lot quicker than that.
I haven't thought about that, about radiation affecting like genetic mutation and that contributing to like natural selection. That is it's a fascinating idea. But I also want to talk about before you even get to that point, you're going to have these like competing political interests when it comes to resources. I hope that if you haven't seen The Expanse yet, you
Oh,
watch
I've
it.
seen it. I've seen it.
Okay.
I
So you've got the Belters, and you've got all these,
and you
you
talk
know,
about putting the harshness of Earth's gravity to work
yeah, no
from
kidding.
kind of like interrogation standpoint.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
Oh wow.
so can you imagine somebody anticipates this, that humanity is going to segregate, and so they put together a policy that says humans can only be born on Earth. Like, if you're pregnant or what have you, you have to come back to Earth to have your child. And like the first few years are here. That way, you always have like this common perspective for humanity, regardless of where they are in the solar system.
Well, that's unfortunately just highly impractical because of the travel time. Unless you got travel time really down. I was really interested to see recently. I was learning more about some SpaceX planned missions to Mars, and they're talking about travel times of like a month. And I
Hmm.
was like, I didn't know that was going to be
I
possible.
don't see that happening with chemical rockets.
So what have you seen? I've seen 3 or 6 months, but before I always thought it was 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months is what I heard. I think you need like the nuclear propulsion for the 1 month.
Yeah. So I guess at some point, if you get your travel speeds low enough, then you're having you're gonna have to subject unless if you want to get anywhere quick, you have to subject people to some serious G's. And if we're talking about a pregnant woman, then there's some inherent risks and problems there. So I can't see a policy like that.
I mean, ideally, you would like to travel at 1G. Uh, you know, you
Yeah.
uh, you're pushing your ship fast enough that you have that
Well,
1G
ideally
gravity.
for most humans, not for me.
Not for you. Okay, well, it's variable. There's like a knob on the wall. You just turn it. Alexa, reduce gravity.
I just I really hope that we can get more into like gravity manipulation, that we can do more research there and learn, because all of the things that we thought were impossible 100 years ago, we've a lot of them we've done and beaten, and you just couldn't even imagine where society would go 100 years ago. You couldn't imagine that it would. Um, well, you couldn't imagine all of the things that we have now, but you could imagine a decent bit of them. But it's there's still a lot that just happened that you couldn't think of. So hopefully, a lot of potentially seemingly impossible things will happen that will enable us to have a little knob on the wall where we can reduce our it reduce our individual gravity, like while maybe the rest of the ship is experiencing.
It'd be a big belt buckle. Just kind of like tap it, and like any matter that's touching it, it's like reduced and
I
stuff.
like that idea. But then, like at some point, your feet are if you've got some level of gravity, then your feet are touching the floor. So there has to be some like artificial intelligence awareness of where your body ends, I guess. Um, Speaking of which, AI, have you ever learned about like AI governance? So
Like,
like
what do you mean?
uh, in the Culture series by Ian M. Banks, a Scottish sci-fi author, um, he has this society where they're governed, this advanced future society where they're governed by these artificially intelligent beings. Um, and it's a fascinating concept because, maybe since we're so bad at governing ourselves, maybe an artificial intelligence would end up being better.
Yeah. Now, what's that quote? If there wasn't a God, we would invent one.
Yeah,
So the AI is sort of that somebody to tell us what to do, keep
yeah,
us in line,
yeah.
enforce
I think
enforce that stuff.
a really big variable about where space technology is going to end up is what we can do with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it just, where is what does it mean to be human? What's the importance of being human? You know, it's like it's just like arbitrariness in terms of I'm me, so that's significant to me. But then whenever you're like need some type of external validation for that need, that I'm actually significant, it's like they start breaking down whenever uh, the structure of life becomes so malleable. You become lost, like you were saying about the whole Asimov's um, or Pavlov's hierarchy of needs. It's just, yeah,
Maslow, yeah. Um,
Pavlov. Yep.
as, not Maslow's, yeah.
Maslow's, yes.
We
Russian dude.
um, yeah, it's really interesting how the more you learn, the
Maslow.
less you know, and and how you can kind of start to get lost when you think about the different ways that the atoms that make up you are put together, and how the whole system is I don't know, um, how how you're just another like drop of water in the ocean. But there's also, on the flip side of this, like existentialism, there's also this um, peace and this oneness and this zenness of being just, part of everything. Um, but, there's always going to be this wonder about how much of the ego, how much of what makes me me is the complexity of information that has that goes into me having a brain and being able to think and all of this, and how much of it is, something spiritual.
And
Um,
not even the brain, like the spiritual part. It's really um, the pattern uh, of waveforms that are firing throughout the brain that is reacting to itself and to its observations. That I mean, it's like the difference between like the program running on the computer versus the computer. Like I could take the operating system off this computer, put it in a virtual machine, put it in a different computer, and run it just fine, right? And if you could take those patterns out of the head and run it onto something else, and that other thing thought it was you, is it you?
that's what's real. One thing that's really interesting about Neuralink to me, and this idea of AI symbiosis, is at what point, like, if you decided to have a digital consciousness or even a partially digital consciousness, at what point is that at what point are you versus a copy of you? And you run into those issues with teleportation technologies that would destroy you and recreate you. Are we the product of the continuity of our consciousness? And if so, can we transfer our consciousness to a digital form and still maintain that continuity? I've thought about like if we had like a progressive approach where maybe you install like a solid state drive in your brain and you start to transfer and your consciousness starts to feel out, the memory of the memory cells and things like that. You start to feel out your digital self and expand into it. When you transfer the last bit of your consciousness, do you die or do you metamorphosize? Like uh, at what point is there an interruption in your continuity of consciousness that is substantial enough that you're no longer you?
Yeah, Frederick Pohl, I don't know if you heard of him. He's a science fiction writer as well. I mean, he died, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. But he wrote a short story that was just like that. It was this guy who was building a computer system to um, hold consciousness, and he wasn't quite sure at what point that became him. It's kind of, I think it's called Model Man or something like that. Let's see, Frederick Pohl, um,
Okay, so
Model Man. Yeah, um, I'll have to look it up, but I remember it's like I like models. Yeah, I can't find the story right now, but it's yeah. I mean, these are all like difficult questions to answer. I mean, at some point you just have to decide to go with something and stick with it until it gets worn out, and then you're lost again, and you have to find something else to stick with.
yeah, I think you have to accept your own mortality before undergoing anything like this anyway. So, but the question is, like, so for the teleportation thing, if we go, into a teleportation device and it analyzes our atoms and then vaporizes us and recreates reassembles those atoms somewhere else, like, would we ever know if we were just killing ourselves over and over? And what does it mean to be us and not a copy of us? You know, and I've wondered sometimes, when I go to sleep at night, if I'm not dying every time in some way, because that part of my consciousness is is potentially coming to an end, and then everything's being rearranged and something new is coming out the other side. Like,
Yeah, it is definitely easy to go down that road too far,
yeah, it
or
is.
at least farther than you're ready for. Sometimes maybe you can't go too far, but maybe you need some preparation before going down that road too long.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of mindfulness helps.
Yeah, it's like mountain climbing. No mountains beyond you. It's just you may not be quite ready for it yet.
I want to write that on my wall. That's inspiring in its own way to just kind of take these progressive, incremental steps to advance yourself. Um, well, unfortunately, I have to take my little kitten to the vet
Well,
for some more
I
shots.
well, it was great talking to you, Andy, and good luck on your venture. I'd love to see it progress, and feel free to reach out if for any reason.
Thank you. This has been one of the best conversations I've had in a very long time. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing more videos coming out of your project, and hopefully, one thing you might could consider doing is starting a page on your website where you provide links to some of these different projects that people that you're interviewing are doing.
Oh yes, that'd be great. Yeah, and I wrote down the cleanupspace.net. And then your prime, and you got space generation network, um,
Well, that the website is stellargenesis.com.
stellargenesis.com. Yes, no, that would be fantastic. In addition to like maybe making in the link, I could have, these are all the projects that people are working on, and you know, it's yeah. No, I totally think that'd be a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I've started doing a little bit of that with things I come across with Stellar Genesis. On the updates tab, it's kind of like a blog, and I put a spotlight on something. And I put a spotlight on you and did a little article about your project. And there's another one about this really cool venture to develop to have a lab in orbit, um, where different companies can rent, use or make use of this autonomous lab to maybe develop pharmaceuticals or any number of manufacturing or research interests. So anyway, there's so much out there that the space community is doing that is just mind-bogglingly exciting and powerful, and and I love learning about it. And it'd be really cool just to just have that the resources to see like, oh, all these different projects in one place. So hopefully you can come across a lot and link to them.
That would be awesome. And okay, well, good luck with the kitten, and talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye bye.